Right. Pretty simple scene. As you see, not so many objects. The glasses, the fruits, this glass, and yeah. So, okay, for the lighting, I always make a layer and I call it studio setup, like this here on the left side in the layers menu. As you see, now the lights are hidden, but let's unhide them to experiment the lights directly. Close it. Right. Shift L to unhide the lights. Okay. In this layer that I call it a studio setup or a studio lighting setup, there are my lights, as I told you. Let's see it from top view. And unhide the camera. Oh, a lot of cameras. So, this camera is a telecamera, as you see. For this purpose, let's hide all the other cameras, right? Okay. This is our camera, a Fstorm camera, and it's telecamera, as you see, yeah, 12. Right. So, if this is the main camera, this is also the main or key light. As I told you, it's in something like 30 or 40 degrees distance with the camera here. So it illuminates the scene directly. Yeah. But there are also other lights. They have two roles, as I told you. These lights, we call them secondary lights. They have two roles. First is that they brighten the hard shadows made by these key light, the hard shadows that are made on the opposite side of the light here. These lights soften those shadows or brighten those shadows, but because they're also colorful, as you see, this one is orange, something like orange, and this one blue, they also colorize the scene, and they produce interesting reflects on the glasses. That's very important to achieve that painting feeling in this kind of renders. So another important part of the lighting setup is the light blocks, as I told you, these boxes. They are placed here in order to block the light from illuminating the whole area. So, for example, as you see this key light here, it's lightening the scene. But of course, on the cloth, because of this block, it cannot lighten the other side of this cloth, so it will become darker and more interesting, as you saw here. that box is blocking the light from lightening this area. Same for here. As you see here, there is another box here. It blocks the light from illuminating the left side of the scene to make the background on the left side darker. And this block as well, this one is preventing these two lights from interfering with each other. It makes in fact a hole between these two lights, because when they reach together, this area or this part here that you see will become very confusing. So the role of this block is to prevent the mixture between these two lights. Also, in order to have these sharp, long reflections, there are two important factors. First is that the lights, they themselves should be in rectangular form. But very important, another important factor is the directionality. Directional angle, here and here. They're very important to prevent the lights from diffusing or lightening everything. It makes them more limited. So let's see them directly in the render and discuss them all directly in the render. So in order to do that, I will use the Fstorm gray material mode. That's in fact override material. I will enable this, and let's also open the Fstorm light lister to see the whole lights. Okay, let's put this one here, this one here. Also, something important, as I mentioned in the previous video, if you remember, is the environment part. As you notice, it's only 0.05. Sorry. So as you see, it's very low amount. Because if it's high, then it will illuminate everything and it will destroy the shadows. That's not really a good idea. It will destroy the value in the scene, in fact. Okay, so this way, let's also bring down the resolution here to something like 600. Of course, I wish my laptop doesn't start its noisy fan. I wish, of course. Right, 600 to 600. Let's go back here. Okay, the other settings we are seeing here are the general Fstorm settings. Of course, I can take a screenshot from it and provide it in the videos as well. But okay, now, okay, let's disable all the lights. First the environment, and then all other lights. It's also, as I told you, is in gray material mode. And let's do run the RT mode. Okay. takes a little bit of time to collect the scene materials. Okay, I guess it's ready. Let's, just because all the lights are disabled, let's just enable the environment HDRI at first. Let's check the GPU if it's in. Okay. This one in the performance. Right. Okay. As you see, the environment is having a very slight effect on the scene, only 0.05. And now let's enable the lights one by one. First one is the light key, this one. Let's enable it, the key light. Right. Okay, it's our main light. Okay, notice this area. It's blocked by this box. Of course, it's invisible to the camera in the object properties. If we go, we can see not visible to the camera. Right. Now we can enable the lights one by one. So the next light is this blue one. We can enable it. Of course, it has a very slight effect. Right. As you see, it's illuminating this part of the scene very slightly, but its effect will be clear in the reflections later when we enable the complete shading mode. And also this light on the left side, the red light, I enable it as well. The red one. Yeah. You see, it's very slight. This light, you see, it's a spherical Fstorm light. Its role is just to brighten this part of the wall. So let me enable it as well. It prevents this area to be completely dark. Another white. Yeah, there is a backlight here. As you see, there is as I say, there is a block here. It's blocking this part of the scene. But also there is a light in between the wall and this block to give some light to these plants, as you see. They have opacity maps, and for decorating these kind of scenes, for achieving this painting effect, it's always very good idea to have this kind of ornating opacity maps between the real objects and the background. They are like painting brushes in traditional painting. They work as a transition. Okay, so let's enable this light as well. It's also very slight, and the color is green. The logic was only to have a different color, not only blue and red on the other lights. Okay, also the last light. Okay, look, there is also a very big light here. It's a little bit far from the objects, but it's helping to have a reflection here as well on the glasses, and also illuminating this part more. So let's enable it as well. Right. As you see, it gives a little bit of more depth to the scene. Especially for these shadows. Right, and it's a pretty simple scene, but the lighting is important. Okay, so now let's disable the gray material mode or the override material mode here to see the real render. Let's see the temperature here. Oh. Should use overclock here. I wish it doesn't become noisy. Anyways, yeah. Right. the fan started working. Okay, as you see the effect of dispersion on the glass here, you see it's colorizing the glass. It's very important for reaching this painting effect. It's very important. This area on the glass, as you see, it's colorized completely. It's not only the effect of the lights, it's also because of the dispersion in the glass material. I can show you here. Here you go. In this material here, see dispersion is, the amount is very low, 0.04. Also the cracks on the glass material, as you see here. In the fingerprints. Right. Right, everything pretty simple. The fall-off effect you see on the Gaulics. You take the material here. Yeah. the subsurface scattering effect on the grapes. Very important. It's same for the wine, it's also subsurface scattering. Okay, if you notice, I use two parameters. First, translucency. I change the color to purple like this. And the amount is 1. But it's also mixed with the diffuse color of the grapes. So you see here, like this, yeah. And also the volume distance. It's very important. I used number 1. And absorption almost same color as the translucency color. This number defines the level of the translucency in the material, in the shader. For example, if I use 0.1, for example 5, becomes brighter. It helps more light moving through the object, through the grapes. Let's bring it back to the its first number. It was 1. It also looks interesting here. It's good, but the only reason I didn't use this number, it was a little bit personal taste. I didn't want it to destroy the contrast. I wanted more contrast because, as you see, it's destroying the contrast. It's beautiful, but it's bringing down the contrast. So I use 1. Just a personal preference. For the table material, as you see, make another group here, wood. Use this. Okay. The wood material also not very complicated, but the fall off is very important. This is a combination of different Fstorm mix slots, and the Fstorm dirt that's defining the edges, in fact the dirt on the edges, very important. So the whole material is in fact a combination of two materials. One is the wood's natural material, and the other one for the scratched areas, in fact, is a sort of bright wood. And the mixture is defined by the Fstorm dirt, as you see. I also use a color correct to give more contrast to it, or totally change its behavior. So totally this is the scene, and for the fabric, we take the material of the fabric. The fabric is from Megascans. Let me bring it here. Yeah, if I just type here fabric, yes, as you see, a lot of good assets are there. You can use them. I used one of these fabrics, I don't know which one. Something like this. As you see, there are many interesting choices here. I guess I use something like this, for example, or this. And then I exported it to the 3ds Max, then I changed the color in 3ds Max. I decreased the saturation to make it whiter. Okay, 3ds Max is saving, is in autosave process. It will be fine after a few minutes. Let me close this one. Right, also something important here, as you see this colorized area inside the jar or in the glass, it's, I mean, in fact, the water inside is also another object, and another material is sort of light blue glass, but it also has dispersion here. Okay, the autosave finished. So as you see, when they combine together, they have sort of like analog effect, or those interesting vintage colorful glass effects. Here, as you see, the wheat grasses, in fact, they're working, as I told you, they are working as a transition between the objects and the background. They fade into the background. As you see, of course, you should play with the form to give it an interesting form. Yeah, you see, I distributed them easily by hand. I just copied and pasted them one by one. Here you see other samples here as well, sort of wood trashes, as you see here. So this dark area, as I said, is the effect of this block. As you see here, it's like an obstacle is blocking the light from illuminating the left side or corner of the wall. As you see. Okay. Now, in order to see the effect of the lights and the scene, in the shaded mode, let me disable the lights again. I can pause the render now and disable all these lights and the environment as well. Okay, so all of our sources of light that are the environment and the scene lights are disabled now. So I will go back to the render to see how it looks. Okay, nothing. So the first thing again we do is to experiment the whole illumination effect is enabling the environment HDRI. It shouldn't be exactly HDRI image, but it gives more light information to the scene. Okay, it's the basic illumination of the environment light. And also, okay, now I can enable the key light, like what we did at the beginning, to see the effect. Right. So now we have two sources of light. The key light and the environment light. It looks very good in my opinion. But in order to have those beautiful reflections and help the scene to be more colorful, yeah, we can enable the other lights as well. So yeah, the blue light, you see it's illuminating the scene. You see the highlights here, the blue highlights. See, it becomes interesting. And the red one, this one on the left, you see the highlight here. And something interesting to notice is that Fstorm is a very fast render engine. It's really interesting for me. Very fast. The only problem of the GPU render engines is their memory issue, that you need a lot of memory for the textures. I enabled the bitmaps compression here in the render settings rollout so that it helps to have more space in the memory, but of course it makes the render a little bit blurry. Okay, now, yeah, you see the red highlights here on the left side. Right. Okay, you see this area is interesting, but completely dark. Close this one. This area is completely dark. It's beautiful, but it's not bad to have a sort of a little bit of slight or dim light over there. That's produced by this one, by this spherical light, as I say. Okay, so let me enable it. You see, it prevents this side from absolute darkness. Unfortunately, Fstorm doesn't have something like light mix in kernel render to be able to play with all these lights, but it's fortunately fast. So you see this light on this side, this spherical light, it helped this area from becoming absolutely dark. So this light here is illuminating the backside of the scene. That's also one of the important lights in studio lighting, the backlight. Yeah, you see its green effect on the wheat grasses and also on the main glass. So it's a combination of all these colors. It shows how important it's to have different sources of colorful lights with, of course, a correct harmony and correct combination. You see. And also the last light. Yeah, on this part, you see from right side, it's completely directly illuminating the scene. So let's enable it as well. Yeah, it has a very slight effect here. You can also see here as well. Sorry, slight. Just helps some reflections over the reflective materials like metal or glass or things like this. So that's it. Oh, and something important I forgot to mention for the tone mapping. Yeah, I'm using slightly normal numbers, the default numbers. The saturation, I decreased it a little bit. The contrast, I increased. Burn value, very important because the key light burns the the lightened areas, so I needed a strong burn value. And also very important is the using the LUTs, very important. I used default armchair, the famous armchair LUT. Yeah, deluxe armchair. I guess it exists in default 3ds Max LUTs folder. And if I disable it, let's see, yeah, you see, without this LUT, the scene doesn't look so interesting. The contrasts are very good. The scene looks real. What? It looks a little bit more older and dreamy, I don't know, sort of more painting-like. Of course, I decreased the effect to 0.8 or maybe even less to clarify the render more. Yeah, as you see, 0.6 is also good. It's just a matter of personal taste. When we decrease it, it becomes more clear. And more contrast, but it loses that painting effect. If I increase it, yeah, it becomes older, dimmer, more dreamy. So it's only based on purpose. I like these analog effects and I use them in my works a lot. Like real old film style effects. Can again go back to 0.6. Okay. See it? Very simple scene, but correct placement of the objects. And also very important, lighting. Lighting is very important. It took a lot of time for me to achieve my desired lighting effect in the scene. But fortunately, I could get the result I wanted. Okay. Yeah, Fstorm is very fast, really. Okay, it's almost ready. Okay, I have saved a higher resolution render from past. We can use it for the post-production, so we can stop the video here now.